three. Well, it says Wilmington address, so phone them at 937-584-2451. They have custom agricultural application, liquid and dry fertilizers, custom agricultural chemical applications, soil sampling, crop planting, seed sales. Call Paul Harris at 937-584-2451. And, of course, we're here at the home of Charlie's Place in Sabina. This is where it all happens in Sabina. They've got pizza, subs, they've got you name it. They've got salads. If you're a salad sort of person, I need to be, but I'm not. But
I'm looking at some of this food, and my appetite is starting to churn.
Yeah.
By the way, Paul Harris was one of my football players at Wilmington.
Yeah, you want to put that microphone up a little higher. There you go. Paul Harris, he looks like a football player, and his son Luke looks like a football player. But
I remember Paul. Paul can play the game.
Yeah, Paul can play. But this is where it all happens every Thursday night. Well, I want to welcome our guest in this evening. He's a former coach. He's an author, a local sports historian, and he also writes for the Wilmington News Journal. He is, I call him the old coach, Tony Lamke. And Tony, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Lee. I've had a lot of respect for you over the years. We've known each other for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
We used to come together on Sunday mornings for the coaches show. You remember that?
My land.
And I could tell you some funny stories on
that. Well, we both can. And I just saw an old, I don't know whether he's a nemesis or what, but Roger Barber just walked through the door.
Roger Barber. I've heard of him.
He's looking for somebody or something. There's Roger.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this place is starting to get a little lively in here this evening. But we want to talk about first, you actually have two books.
Yes.
And let's talk about the first one you wrote right off. It was about your playing experience years ago.
I might say, somebody called me an author the other day. Well, I wrote that one when I was 66. I wrote the second one when I was 76. I doubt the third one at 86 is going to make it. But, yeah, I wrote it about my grade school football team, and especially my grade school buddy Grubby. The name of the book's My Pal Grubby, and it's a series of stories about this crazy kid. He was not the brightest kid in the world. In fact, if you ask him to spell cat, he couldn't line up the letters. But other than that, he was a classic kid, and outside of the school, he was the guy, and I learned a lot of good things and some not so good things from Grubby. But it's a funny book. It's a humorous book.
And I think probably a lot of us have met a guy like Grubby over the years.
Everybody has a Grubby, I think, in their life. Yeah, you're right. He's, by the way, we called him great. 11 brothers and sisters, and they had no bathroom in their house. So he'd come to school, and if we'd practice football in the mud the night before, he'd have mud in his ears the next day. So he got the nickname Grubby, and it stuck with him all through school. So
yeah, but your second book is a lot different. It's called No More the Bugle Calls, and tell us about that. A lot of history there.
Yeah, we have a series of letters sent. Well, let me go back here. James Allen and Jemima Phillips were married the same month the Civil War started, April of 1861.
Right.
And like most people then, they thought the war was going to be over in a hurry, so they were concentrating on what newlyweds concentrating on, setting up home and so forth. They lived around Chillicothe area, the Richmonddale, and once he got into the service, once he began to see what slavery was all about and so forth, he'd send letters home. So I have all the letters.
Yeah.
So I knew where he was. I knew kind of what was going on, but there was no store, and I kept telling my wife, we need a story. So I started one day putting down things that I thought he might have done. So I'd say it's a 50-50. Fiction, 50%. I embellished it 50%. Little fact and fiction. So it's an interesting story about this young couple and the things they went through in the Civil War, and it's got some funny parts, got some sad parts. The first soldier he shot, what he went through, how he reacted.
And he was very reluctant to go to the war.
He didn't want to go. He didn't feel he needed to go. He was a kind of a quiet, I think, very intelligent man. His son, in fact, was a very good violinist. He was a teacher. His first son died in a fire when he was 2, but the second guy lived in died in 1951.
Oh.
And so they were smart people, and ended up owning a store. But he ended up getting captured and died at Andersonville, the notorious prison in Georgia. And but yeah, it's a good story. I have to admit, it's a fun story to read.
And a lot of it is set in southern Ohio.
Well, the 91st Infantry was stationed primarily in what is now West Virginia. It was Virginia then. And they were fighting a guerrilla-type warfare against the Confederate soldiers who were really, many of them were outlaws. I mean, they were taking it out on their neighbors and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, and when Grant took over, they began to move south, and that's where he got into some pretty vicious battles and was captured at Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But let's not give the whole book away, because we want folks to buy one and read it.
The end of the book is what's interesting. He died at Andersonville, but that's not really the end of the story. She ended up seeing in the newspaper. I will tell you this much: she saw in the newspaper his name was James Allen. There was a John Allen in a hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, she swore it was her husband. So I always think of her as a Granny Clampett. She was a rough, moonshine drinking, cigar or a pipe smoking gal.
Wow.
And she got on a horse, roadside saddle, from about Chillicothe to Nashville. It was not him.
Yeah, she had a rather different experience there, but
she brought him home.
She brought him home anyhow. Okay, well,
that's the good part.
Didn't want to come home empty-handed, I guess.
No, she all that ride. Got to bring something, a souvenir.
Well, let's talk about your, I guess you'd say, early years. You were in coaching for many years. How did you get into sports? Where did you grow up?
I came out of Hamilton, and Hamilton's a sports town, and I went to a Catholic grade school. I played we had no 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. No, I played on the 7th and 8th grade team when I was a 4th grader. Mm-hmm. And my dad bought my first helmet. It looked like the Michigan helmet, except it was basically made out of cardboard.
Okay.
I mean, there were 2 straps inside, and I remember every time I'd get hit, I'd hit the top of them. I'm surprised I haven't had concussions.
Yeah.
And maybe I have. Maybe that's what's wrong with me.
I don't know.
But yeah, we had a little grade school team. We played a little parochial league. That's where I learned the game, and I always liked football because I never really got very good at it. Went to Hamilton Catholic High School and played mostly defense there, and then I ended up at Wilmington College almost by accident. I worked a year after high school with a guy who drove up here every day to take classes, and he swore it was the greatest place on earth. So I came up, and Fred Riss said he'd get me a scholarship. Well, that was an 8-hour job out at Randall. That was my scholarship. Oh, it was beauty. But you know what? I say that in jest, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It paid my way through college. My last year in college, I actually taught school here in Sabina.
Yeah.
And had Phil Snow and Kenny Briggs and Hoss Taylor and all those boys on that.
How did you ever survive that?
You know what? It was a great year, and I like to say that I taught Phil everything he knew about basketball, but he won't. He
would never admit to that.
No, and nobody else will either. Really.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. That was a good bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And losing Kenny here recently just killed me. We were going to play golf the day he passed away. And I still can't get over the fact that he's gone. But nice bunch of guys, and that's how I got into Clinton County. And Walt Nichols had a lot to do with me coming up here, and tried to get me to come back to Clinton County first as a basketball coach, and but I wanted to coach football, and of course he called me up for the Blanchester job, and I didn't get that job, believe it or not, because of my religion. I know that's hard to believe, but it's what happened. But he called me back, and I went to Clinton Massey, best move I ever made. We had great teams down there, 10 years of great football, built that thing from scratch. When I tell people on the first game against Goshen that the field caught fire when their coach threw a cigarette down, that's a true story. The field was so dry it literally caught fire.
Oh my!
Yeah, it was you see, it's a nice game, and we're stomping out the fire. But that was our first win, and we won our first 6 games, and won 3 championships in 10 years in that Fort Ancient Valley Conference. Tough conference. Boy, that was a tough one. With Mason and Springboro and those guys, it was a beast.
Yeah.
But that's basically my football story. Yeah.
But you kind of walked into. I don't think you even had a field built when you first came there.
No, we laid the field out. Frank Ireland and I laid the field out one Saturday afternoon, and didn't have any tripods or what do you call those surveying stuff.
Yeah.
Laid it out with string and nails. Now remember, we lost. This is a funny story, but since the man's gone, I can tell. We lost to Mason, and we actually were on the 1 foot line, and we didn't score. And that Monday I came in, and our superintendent called me in. He says, "You know why you lost that game?" I said, "No." He said, "I had it surveyed." I said, "And you're 6 inches off."
Oh, my.
I said, "Well, you horses patoot, why didn't you have it surveyed when we were building it?"
Yeah.
I walked out. I was unhappy.
Oh.
He apologized later for that.
That's something.
But stupidity.
Yeah.
All
But Frank he had played football too. You were telling
Frank
me.
Ireland was, I remember when I took the job, Paul Swanberger said, "I've got a coach waiting for you that's got 2 boys that wants to play football, and he's been behind this whole program." I said, "Fine." Well, Frank came into the first boosters meeting, and there he was, bow-legged, and played for Duke University. In fact, Frank played on the only Rose Bowl that was ever played outside of Pasadena.
I know you.
That was in 1941. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor December of 41, and the Rose Bowl was January 1st of 42. They were afraid there was going to be an invasion, so they moved the Rose Bowl to Durham, North Carolina, and that's the only Rose Bowl that was ever played away from Pasadena.
Yeah.
And he was in it.
Yeah. He was pretty much a legend around that area.
Well,
he owned some farm ground.
Yeah, I called him blood and guts because he didn't know any kind of football except whoever survived 4 practices up to Friday started. If you survived, you played.
Yeah.
I had to settle him down more than once, but yeah, we had great times.
Later on in your coaching career, you moved to Wilmington,
I had the Wilmington job. Yeah, I had the Wilmington. Well, I was the guidance counselor. I pretty much had enough football, but they needed a coach, and I took it after I said no 4 times or 5 times. My ego took over, and I took the team for a year, and I had Gary Williams on that team.
Oh, yeah.
And Davey Adzales, and had some good boys, and we played pretty good football. But that was the Sleester years.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember we practiced for 2 weeks to stop Sleester's passing game, and he optioned us to death. He ran that option play.
Yeah.
And he just absolutely killed us with that. He passed well, too, but he ran the option.
It was during that time, too, that it was a great time in the FCOL because you would see Sleester play against Gary Williams and Williams playing against Sleester, not only in football, but you'd see them playing against each other in basketball.
Well, you know, their coach up there, Zekman, took an Ohio State job, went up there with Sleester.
Yep.
And in Gary Williams' senior year, their defensive backfield coach was at our practices a lot. Mm-hmm. And they recruited him as a defensive back.
Right.
Zekman called me one night, and he said, "Gary Williams will never see the defensive side of the line. He's going to be Sleester's receiver." And he was for 4 years, set a lot of records. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many of them still exist, but he had 4 good years.
Oh, yeah.
He was tough.
And, just a shame that Art got himself in the mess that he did. He could have been a pretty decent, at least a good backup.
It's in my top 10 why categories.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at those things and you say, why? Why would something like, why would a guy turn? But yeah, there's a few of those things that have happened in my lifetime that I still can't understand, just what took place. But Arts was one of them. What a talented athlete.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Clinton County sports is, and I know there's a lot of other counties that have great sports history, but Clinton County really has some great athletes that have come out of the area and went on and done well.
I try to write a weekly article, although it doesn't always go weekly, about Clinton County sports history. And when I started researching that, Lee, it was absolutely astounding how many good athletes and how many great stories existed.
Oh, my.
And I like to think I've just touched the surface. Now, I was never a real good student, and spending a lot of time researching in the Clinton County library is not one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel like I'm in some kind of foreign land or something. The library is not part of my. But anyway, I do a lot of research on that, and so far I haven't been found wrong on anything I've done. I had one letter from a guy who didn't think one of the guys I wrote about was as good as I said he was, but the guy won 16 letters, so he wasn't too bad.
He wasn't too bad, yeah.
But anyway, I think they had a battle between the 2 of them. So, but yeah, Clinton County, and I'm sure there are other counties that have sports history, but certainly Clinton County has a fabulous sports history and just fun stuff that that hard to believe a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like Babe Ruth playing here.
Yeah.
That still kind of gets me. But those guys weren't making a whole lot of money. Now Babe might have been, but when he first started, they needed to barnstorm, and they just went all over the place playing fall baseball. They play. I'll tell you another great story is the Clintons, which is what the baseball playing the Washington Athletics, Washington Courthouse. They would play the best 2 of 3. And whoever lost would say, okay, let's make it the best 3 of 5.
Yeah.
Well, then whoever lost would best 5 of 7.
Yeah.
They would go on until they just couldn't go anymore.
Right.
I mean, and one of the great stories also, if I can go just a little
keep going.
Sabina played Wilmington, and they went to Wilmington to play the Clintons. And the Clintons, now when they played out at the North End Field, which was out where Xenia Avenue cuts off. Right.
Okay.
That when they played, the whole town would shut down.
Yeah.
There would literally be a band that would lead the Clintons to the field. Well, Sabina won. So Sabina paid the band to lead them back to the railroad station.
Oh, my.
So then they came up here to play, and they got into, and each team furnished an umpire. They got into a terrible argument about the 6th inning, and the game ended, and Wilmington never got their money.
Yeah. Oh, my. But so much history. You go back and look at, I know you were more of a football coach, but you go back 30 years ago or 40 years ago, maybe even longer, when every little school would play each other in basketball on a Friday or Saturday night or sometime during the week.
County tournaments,
that was unreal.
It was, the competition was fabulous. And you take a little place out here, what's right halfway between Sabina and Wilmington.
Melvin, Reeseville. Yeah.
Reeseville won a championship one year.
Mm-hmm.
Antioch. All these little teams won at least once. And of course, Sabina, New Vienna. I wrote the article today on Paul Turner and his brothers at New Vienna. And that was a great basketball team.
And every school,
and Carey.
Yeah.
Guys were good.
And every school had 1 or 2 really good, solid players.
Yeah.
You go to Sabina, you'd have Phil and those guys.
Rittenhouse and those guys. They were great.
Jack.
Great. That's just great athletes.
And
Blanchester, the Jacoby, and and all those guys. It was good. It was good stuff.
And there was
and the gyms they played.
Oh yeah,
that's the good stories. Supposedly Sabina played in an upstairs gym in the city hall, and one night it rained so hard they had buckets all over the floor catching the water. I mean that's.
But there was nothing like playing in the pit in New Vienna.
New Vienna's pit, and
Roger knows about that place.
And people standing outside for hours in freezing cold, looking at it. Said the best seats in the house.
Oh yeah.
Outside in the weather.
Yeah. And they stand up on the upstairs looking over the rail.
Right, and Jefferson. I can remember walking into the Jefferson gym when I coached Phil and those guys and thinking it was the locker room. And the backboard swayed, and Bruce Taylor told me that they'd put a string, a fishing line on that backboard. When the team was in a fast break, the kids would pull that and jerk that backboard so that they'd never make the basket. I mean, those are unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, Port William have guys like Doggy Fields, Donnie Fields up there.
He told me that his dad, every night, regardless of the weather, would take him out to the garage. There was a 4x4 that went across, and he'd have to shoot over that 4x4 into a basket. He'd have to shoot 100 shots every night. And when I interviewed him, now he was well known for his shooting.
Oh, yeah.
And also, he was not a real, what I'd call a team player. He had a picture on the wall of the championship team he was on. And I said, I got to have that picture and get the names. I said, tell me who they were. He could name himself and Donnie DeVoe.
Yep.
And then he says, I can't remember who the rest of these guys were.
Oh, yeah. But just so much fun. My mom was a band director back in the 60s at Martinsville. And, of course, we got to go see, everybody in the county play. A lot of times the band would travel. Sometimes they didn't. But you'd go play Clarksville, and Big Jimmy Credit would be under the basket.
Right.
And you didn't go under the basket against Big Jim.
No. Well, there was a lot of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
The name of the guy out at Martinsville, big guy, Cecil Meade.
Cecil Meade,
I called Cecil.
Big Cecil.
I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I said to Cecil, what are you doing these days? He said, watching television.
Yep, that was Cecil. Yeah. But you'd have Cecil under the basket. You'd have Tommy Custis. When he got to half court, Tommy was ready to launch.
Yeah, there were some great athletes and some great stories. And
oh my!
Those little gyms. They said Fields would get a rebound, turn around, and shoot because the gym was so small. He'd shoot from the other end of the.
Oh yeah.
And when the kids complain, when his teammates complain, he would say to them, "Get your own rebound."
But but one of the best rivalries for several years was between Sabina and Simon Kenton or New Kenton. You had the Hoopers and Snows and Anders and those guys.
Right, that's exactly right. The thing ended in '63.
Yep.
When the Hoopers were at Simon Kenton and Phil and the group was at Sabina, and they had some one point games, just knocked right down to the wire. I'm looking over at Roger here, and Roger's remembering those days.
Oh
yeah. This was a great rivalry.
Yeah,
a great rivalry.
And
another thing too, Lee.
Yeah.
Those teams, and I've heard this from more than one athlete. They played so hard in that county tournament that when they got to the state tournament, they literally didn't have a lot left.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from more than one guy. We played so hard to win that county tournament that when we'd go over to Xenia or we'd go to the Dayton Fieldhouse, or when we'd go to Wilmington, any of these places, we were just dead tired. We just left. So I think that's really true.
You'd go to the Sabina gym or Lee's Creek gym, and what they used to call the old barn up there.
That's right.
And boy, there'd be some shootouts, and it would just get pretty wild.
Willard Henry still has the scoring record, 64 points. And he scored those against Clarksville after Clarksville had 2 years of no basketball. They were building a new gym. So he never really liked that record. He felt guilty because he said it was all on layup shots.
Yeah.
He said we'd get the tip the ball after every point. And he said we'd get the ball and pass them in, I'd lay it up. And he said, so I'm not really proud of that record. But still, 64 points is 64
points. That's 64 points is good.
And Kingman, one of the old Kingman teams, beat Springboro 100 and something to 2.
Yeah.
The 2 points were scored by a Kingman player.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't skunk them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good sportsmanship.
Good sportsmanship.
30 to 2, and you score the 2 points so that you wouldn't skunk them.
Yeah. That's something. But who are some of and I could call out names all night long, but who are some of the most outstanding players that you've not only known but had hear stories about?
Well, Wilmington went through when Okie was coaching there, they went through a series of quarterbacks that I envy. I mean, just great quarterbacks. I can't name all of Dwight Wallace and John Petty and Stevens, Chris Stevens. They were great athletes and great quarterbacks, and they had great athletes. Basketball-wise, Bob Jacoby, I think, was. Bruce Taylor again. I asked him what was the best team he ever saw. And I thought he would name a Sabina, New Vienna. He said the Kingman team with Pigeon, Collett,
Charlie Weaver.
And
there was quite a few of those guys.
That's the best team he ever saw. And who might argue with him?
Yeah.
He was a good interview. He said one time Rudiso had a habit of just coming on the floor and just shaking his finger.
Oh, I know.
He said one time he made a call, and it was a good call, he thought, and Rudy's up on his feet, and he's heading towards him, and he comes out there, and he's shaking his finger, and he says, I just want to tell you, Bruce, that after the game, you can come over to my house for food. But he said the fans were going crazy thinking they were catching and he said it was just for dinner.
But Tom Russo, he could get pretty fired up.
He could get real fired up, he was one of the wilder coaches. Al Brownlee down at it was a quiet coach, but he was evidently a good one because he had some of the best teams at Kingman with Pigeon and those guys. They were good athletes. Wilmington, of course, a lot of Vanscoy stories. How he would go out and win a football game and then go out to the Melody out there, where Frisch is now, and get into a fight with 2 or 3. I mean, he was a scrapper. And there's just, it goes on and on and on. I could sit here for hours trying to rethink of all these people that played.
But you go to New Vienna, there would be either a Strieber or a Cluxton or a Turner on that team every year.
Cluxton's had a great series. Certainly the Bill Huffman, Tom Carey were outstanding athletes.
Yes.
Paul Turner, I just interviewed him, as I said,
Yeah.
and he said Huffman was the best player he ever played with or against anywhere. He said he was that good.
Yeah.
It just story after story what these guys did, what they were able to do. I remember most of them didn't have locker rooms, so they would dress in different rooms, and I think Willard Henry told me they dressed in the band room, and at halftime they were winning big, and the only restroom was the one where the fans were, so they didn't want to go down to where that was. So there was the tuba, and guess what they all did in the I hate to see that tuba on Monday.
He wouldn't be the happiest guy in school, would he?
But those are the stories, and they're not very nice, but very, very funny, I think.
Yeah. Well, who are some of the real standout, legendary coaches throughout the area that you either met or have heard a lot of stories about, of course?
Well, of course, you mentioned one, Rudisell, and Buck Carter right here.
Buck, yeah.
Buck, I worked with him for a year. He was the head coach when I was with the junior high, middle school coach over here. We had some great times. We still had great stories. We told stories right up to the day he passed, and lots of fun. I remember over at New Vienna one night, I was in the locker room with the team, and he said to the team, "Let's get ready to go." And I head out the door, and he grabbed me and said, "Don't you go out there." And about that time, the New Vienna team came out to that Hold That Tiger. That time, they come running by there. They took me right out to the gym.
They carried you out of there.
Saved my life.
Yeah.
But these were all. There's just so many of them. The guy that started the SCOL, Black, 1923. First name always escapes me. I want to say Joe, but he was a great coach. Really one of the first great football coaches at Wilmington High School. And these guys were outstanding people. I mean, you're right here at the college. Bill Ramsar. There wasn't anything better than Bill.
Oh yeah,
Bill was the best.
Had some great teams.
Great teams. And really, I played out there when they were ready to drop football. And the only thing I can say about our team is we kept it on campus. There was about 20 of us that just continued to go out for the team. We got killed every weekend, but it's still there, and I feel very proud of that.
Yeah.
We were a part of that.
It's been great. Let's get back to the books real quick, because how can people get a hold of the books?
They're at Books and More. In fact, I took some in there today. They can always call me, and I can mail it to them. I'm in the phone book. The book is a $20 book, and I think it's worth every. In fact, I ought to charge $40 for this book. It's so good.
No. Okay. All right.
Pat, I see. Pat, you're giving these away, right? Pat's giving it. Pat's giving it. Anybody want these?
Yeah. Oh boy.
But anyway, it's a decent book. I'm not a skilled writer, but I did the best I could to give my wife's family a little bit of a story. And it's very interesting how it ends with this gal and this guy in Nashville. But it was just, I'm sure there were thousands and thousands of stories that have been told. So, and my wife painted the cover on that, by the way. She's an artist, and she's pretty good at that kind of stuff.
And don't forget about Grubby.
And Grubby, I still got a few Grubbies left, and that's a $10 book. You get a bargain there.
All right. Well, it's not quite as big of a book, but
it's not quite as big.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of humor in it. This guy was nuts.
Well,
he was a very, very funny guy. I remember one time when we were kids, we were going to build an airplane. He had a hill behind his house, so we got all these cardboard boxes and pieces of plywood. Then we got into a fight who was going to fly the plane.
Oh.
Well, he won. So I shoved him off the hill, and he went straight down and crashed. I can still see him laying on his back down there crying. I thought to myself, boy, I'm glad I didn't fly that plane.
Yeah, no doubt.
But that's the kind of nut he was.
Yeah. Well, Tony, it has just been a great honor and a pleasure to have you here, share some old memories.
I talked too much, but
well, no, you didn't.
Like
that's exactly why we wanted you up here, to get these stories. And we had Pat on a few weeks ago. And
Pat tell a story?
One or two, mostly about poor William, but
well,
no, I'm just kidding.
Pat Haley's articles in the paper are
we love those things.
Yeah, they're good things. He lies a lot, too. I wish he didn't tell so many lies. You wouldn't think he was a former lawman, would you?
You wouldn't think so. Well, Pat and I have known each other longest.
He was a good friend of mine.
He's kind of looking at you, a little sideways there,
He's giving me the bad eye.
But yeah, once again, it's been a pleasure having you here and all the great stories.
Pleasure's all mine.
We could talk forever about some of this stuff, but it's great.
I know.
And we want to thank you. We want to thank our sponsors, Charlie's Place, for hosting us here and all the great food. We could see all the food. We're not getting any of it right now, but I don't know what's happening here.
Promised to. I didn't.
But it's looking good.
That's okay. I'll come back.
Nothing else, we'll get the leftovers if there are any, man. But at any rate, thank you, and we want to thank our other sponsors, MC Auto, just down the street here, and also Melvin Liquid Fertilizer. And if some of these folks in here want a book or two signed, we'll be glad to do that. Tom South's over there. He's got his wallet. The moths are flying out of it, and they're all over the place now. We'll probably get condemned, but at any rate, he's got a little money. We'll get him to buy a book or two. But at any rate, thank you, Tony. Thanks for everybody being here and stopping by, and we'll see you again real soon. We'll be back next Thursday.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you. And
Next time you buy.
All right. Astros Sports Show right here at Charlie's Place. Thank you.